Well, when I think of the humanities, or what comes to mind when I think about humanities, honestly, a big building, a very large building on UW campus that my grandmother worked at, Humanities. And so when I would enter Humanities, it was there's a very large mural, a yellow and man, and they're all kind of like doing this like funky like signs. I knew it was arts. I knew that Humanities always drew this like eye roll in our family. Oh, Humanities, eye rolls. And I think it was just like a pushback to perhaps what my family, being immigrants, felt that Humanities didn't reflect them and that their stories, and that it was kind of a misnomer because their culture as an immigrant wasn't even represented in the humanities. So I think of institution, of a very institutionalized building, which is probably going to be really interesting for a lot of folks who are hearing this, because I later on learned what it meant. But if that's what, I think it goes to show that even a word like humanities can be institutionalized.
Wow. So outside of the institution, the actual,
like once I learned what it really meant.
No, that's a great story. But then the part that is about kind of like the collective human experience.
Yes.
What do you think is important about the humanities, or what is the value of the humanities for us?
I think having that collected experience of that embodies the word humanities, or that it's in the spirit of, I think it's important for all of us to get connected with our culture, with who we are. Why do we do the things that we do is just as important as how well we do them. I think we get caught up a lot of times in how well do we do things instead of why do we do things. And I think humanities is like a vehicle for that. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Let's see. So many people are concerned that the humanities are under attack, and things like STEM are considered to be more important, kind of like what we do, like you said. So why do you think it's important to, or do you think it's important, and if you do, why do you think it's important to support the humanities or support access to the humanities?
Yeah, I've heard that too, that humanities are under attack, and I think that it is under attack in a way that's different though than other times, in that the very people who are putting it at attack doesn't understand that the humanities could very well be their vehicle to alleviate their oppressions, and that they've been conditioned in such a way to not see that vehicle, that it's a way for them to alleviate some of their oppressions or overcome some of their own personal doubts, and being able to reflect on other people's stories and creating empathy. I think that's what is at the core of humanities, is creating this very deep appreciation and empathy. And there's like levels to generosity and empathy and gratitude. And the humanities really dives into that. It's really that space where we can play, and it's a kind of like you're in between a lot of things, right? And it's like a very nebulous place, and a lot of people fear that because they don't have an anchor, or they don't see the floor, they don't see the ceilings, they need structures, and in this space, there is not a structure.
Wow. The answers are so deep.
Oh, thank you, Allie.
It's really hard for me not to respond like, and I'm like, no, I can't say anything while you're talking. Okay, let's see. So you kind of already said this, but another kind of version of this question is, how do the humanities help us navigate the human experience? So if there's anything else you want to say about it. Okay, yeah, you just did.
Yeah.
All right, so why, let's see. So you've presented programs in libraries. Why do you think it's important for people to be able to access free programs through the libraries? Why should people come out?
So the reasons why I enjoy working with libraries and partnering with libraries as a consultant, as an artist, as a storyteller, is because libraries are sanctuaries. They're these huge sanctuaries of humanities, of the human experience. And for a lot of folks who are perhaps dealing with domestic violence, who are dealing with socioeconomic oppressions, people who don't have cars, people who have disabilities, people who have inabilities to connect socially, the libraries is a sanctuary where you can be alone and be surrounded. So the best way I can say it is like you're alone, but you're like surrounded by so many stories, book covers, like audio visual stuff. This is where you first learn to use a computer. This is where you first kind of learn to be quiet, both inside and out. It's a very meditative place. It's the closest thing to church without religion. Yeah.
Great. Let's see. So why are racial equity and social justice important for libraries?
Oh, for all the reasons I just said, because libraries are a public sanction for racial justice being interactions. And that can go everything from like how a librarian treats a rowdy bunch of black kids to how a supervisor or a librarian discerns whether or not queer Latino books are being highlighted. So it goes from all of that to the basics of just like running into people that you wouldn't ordinarily not run into in your own circle. And so libraries are a great place to kind of bump into people, especially if like you're both like digging on like wedding cake making or something like really random like that, or bread making. I mean, if you're in that same section, in the nonfiction section, most likely you guys have something in common now.
So that's the last question was about like why is racial equity important for libraries? The next question is what role can libraries play in advancing racial equity and social justice more broadly?
So I think they are already doing that. I was part of like the inaugural Take Over the Library grant in the Madison Public Libraries, where we literally took over the whole sanctuary, the whole building, and I think they already are doing that, more so than other public institutions. I think that because of the nature of humanities and libraries, they've been in front of the curve for a while. And I think now it's what they're doing, like what I was saying about taking over the library grant, that it was helpful to for self-empowerment through an economic vehicle, and how kind of giving that laboratory space to where they can monetize things and try out new roles. Because just like how you want to try out different types of nonfiction books, you want to try out different roles in your life, different careers. And if any place to do that would be at a library, why not? Because you already feel safe.
Great. Let's see. Okay, so the Ripple Project is this year-long series of events in all the Dane County libraries with the goal of kind of diversifying the group of presenters at the libraries, and so what do you think could be the impact of that, or what do you hope would be an outcome of the Ripple Project for the libraries or for our communities?
I would hope that through the Ripple Project, both library staff can really enjoy how a community can come together and learn a new nuance, intersectionality of a certain racial group, a certain cultural group, a certain ethnic group, a certain religious group, regarding sexual orientation, and going beyond that label, right, and really being able to dive into the nuance of that culture, because we are not a monolith. Latinos are not a monolith. Latinos, we're just so many different types of Latinos. Just like there's so many different types of Black people. Just like there's so many different types of LGBTQ people. I would hope that the Ripple Project would gain that ripple effect and introduce people to nuances of culture and diversity and racial justice, and also explore like unique ways of solutions to racial injustices that are easily applicable, right? I think that's what I love about the library, is that it's always about like do it yourself in the most easiest and low economic way possible, and I think that's a solution, right? Like a really quick solution to a really hard thing. Could be just simply standing up for somebody else during like a conversation, but you might not feel that empowered if you hadn't already gone through a Ripple Project presentation or something of that sort.
Thank you. Let's see, we just have a couple more.
I was just thinking yesterday, so I was talking to this older lady. She's like, how do I start? Yeah, how do I stand up? I feel like I'm doing nothing, because she had been a social worker like all her life. And I was like, and then she started telling us how she stood up for like people like during some sort of like military type of meeting that she was part of because she's a vet. And I was like, isn't that your action? She's like, oh yeah. Like it's really can be that simple. I think a lot of times we get overburdened with like racial justice has to be like justice is such a strong word. Maybe just like racial show up. I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like just show up one day. Like it's only going to take you 5 minutes. So I don't know. I mean, it's a scary 5 minutes though, depending on where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah, can be. Let's see. Some of these other questions are for library stuff. Okay, so I guess the last question is, could you just talk a little bit about your own program and what you're excited about for your own program?
Yeah, so talking about decolonization through a Latina lens is going to be really, I think really, it's been needed. I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to start over again. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for my program, for can't talk. Start over.
You start over as many times as you
Okay. My Ripple Project, and why am I happy and why am I doing this Ripple Project about decolonization through a Latina lens is because, first of all, Sun Prairie has a special heart for me. Right after graduation, I was a social worker here in Sun Prairie, and there were so many families in rural Wisconsin, Marshall, Dodge, what have you, so many first and second generation Latinos, Mexicanos, and other Latino folk that were here just recently. And so I thought it would be such a great way to talk about what's happened in the last 20 years. How do we reacquaint ourselves in a community that I was literally here almost like every day at night and fall. And so it's going to be so nice to give back to this community in a way that what have we learned in the last 20 years versus where we started. And what I've learned in the last 20 years is taking apart identity, but in a way that's going to actually harvest more of strength and resiliency for the things that are to come. There's so many, it just seems like there's much more attacks or oppressions that are happening on so many different levels, economically, technology-wise. And having this right after the pandemic is going to be so special. It's so special because Latinos, we thrive on networking and meeting each other and learning together. And so learning about how to present, learning more about our identity is going to really help, I think, harvest the new generation as well. So I'm really excited to come to Sun Prairie again after 20 years of now working in this area and connecting with rural Wisconsinites, rural Latino Wisconsinites and other folks who are interested in Latino culture, because I think if before maybe it was nobody would other than Latinos come, I think this time around more folks are going to come that are not Latino as well, wanting to learn about Latinidad, about decolonization through a Latino lens and how that empowerment happens. Where do we gain our strength from? Because Latinos are still the lowest paid cohort in the United States, but yet, I mean, we floss like there is no other, right? I mean, we present ourselves in such a way of empowerment that it's wealth, and it's wealth, and it's wealth besides being rich, right? So there's like a difference, I think, between money richness and then like just looking and feeling wealthy and feeling good about yourself is a monetary value now that I think was not appreciated before the pandemic and is now. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.